All right, today we're talking about resilience and how to bounce back from failure. My guest today is Daniel Shemtob. He lost his house in the LA fires. He also suffered major setback in COVID just a couple of years before that. I'll tell you more about him in a second, so stay tuned.
Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we feature top entrepreneurs, business leaders, and thought leaders and ask them how they built key relationships to get where they are today. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I am the host of this show, and you know if you've listened before that every week we talk with interesting CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs from all kinds of companies, and we've had Netflix, Grubhub, Redfin, Gusto, Kinko's, LendingTree, OpenTable, lots of great episodes. So check out the archives if you want to learn more and check out those episodes. And of course, this episode brought to you by Rise 25, where we help businesses to give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. How do we do that? We do that by helping you to run your podcast. We are the easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. We do the strategy, accountability, and full execution. In fact, we invented what some are calling the Wix of B2B podcasting. It's our platform, Podcast Copilot. So if you want to learn more about that, you can go to rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com. All right. My guest here today, as I said, Daniel Shemtob. First, want to give a shout out to Andy Chang, who's a friend of mine. He's the founder of Optimizers, which is a virtual staffing company that will help you to leverage remote staffing, remote talent from all over the globe. Check him out. You can Google the name, and he's a great guy and a great resource. But my guest today is Daniel Shemtob. He's the CEO of Snibbs and also Born from the Lime Truck. He's a celebrated chef, entrepreneur. He's won the Great Food Truck Race twice on the Food Network. He started his culinary journey at the age of 20, founded the Lime Truck in 2010, quickly became a sensation all around Southern California. But the story that we're telling today is also about setbacks and resilience, because at the time of COVID, he had just expanded his business pretty dramatically. And of course, as you know, many restaurants, many culinary businesses, hospitality businesses are shut down during that period of time. So it was a big period of struggle for him. And then most recently, we're recording this in March of 2025, just 2 months ago, lost his house in the horrible, devastating LA fire. So Daniel, it's a pleasure to have you here today. We'll get into your personal story about what you've been up to for the last 2 months after the horrible fires that ravaged Los Angeles. But I always start people with what they were like as a kid, because I think it's kind of a reflection of who we become as a adult. And you were a hustler. You were going around the neighborhood and I guess papering the neighborhood, telling them about you can do different services. And this is a key distinction, because there's a lot of people that have on the show that do something like that, but they don't figure out that they should hire other kids to actually do the work. And you'd figured that out. So I love to ask about how you figured that out at a young age, because some people, myself included, it takes a lot longer to learn that lesson.
Yeah. You learn a lot and by the way, thank you for having me. And excited to be here. I think, it's funny, the nature versus nurture as who you are as a kid and how you kind of establish, but I always was born to be an entrepreneur. I did everything that's pretty traditional: lemonade stands, selling candy, all the fun stuff. But I noticed in the neighborhood that I was at that there was a really, kind of a growing older population, and it was Newport Beach, so there was a little bit of a disposable income. We weren't in the nicest neighborhood, but we were still in Newport Beach, and what I saw was that there was a lot of requests around the same time, and so I think out of necessity, I realized that I needed a little bit of help, and then also I think it was something really kind of synergistic about using the neighborhood to help the neighborhood. And I really like that kind of aspect of it. And so employing older kids in the neighborhood who had maybe a car or physical attributes that they could do the job, and giving them the tasks and just taking that cut. And so it allowed me to be able to do more work. And then in some cases, it was a necessity because I was 10 years old and didn't have a driver's license or a way to bring back groceries from the market.
So you're 10 years old and you're going around and you're finding 16-year-olds to do these 16, 17-year-olds, and you're recruiting them to do this work in your business. That's a little crazy.
Yeah, I guess. I really thought about it in a long time.
I'm serious.
Not that I'm saying it out loud.
I have not heard that very much.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's cool. And your background is Persian Jewish, right?
That's correct.
And so I grew up in LA and in the West Valley, San Fernando Valley, a lot of big Persian Jewish population there. And I'm a bit fascinated with the immigrant experience, especially, you know, scrappy immigrants that come to this country and that make something from nothing. I think you were born in the United States, right? So your family, it was your parents was the generation that came over.
Correct.
How much do you think that upbringing, being a part of that community, shaped who you are?
Um, so I had a very dynamic childhood, and I didn't follow the same playbook as a lot of the Persian Jews here in LA, and I think it was just kind of circumstantial. So I grew up with parents that worked hard, but we weren't as kind of well off as some of the other Persian Jews in LA and some of those families.
There's a lot of wealth among Persian Jews in LA also too.
There
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
yeah. But what I did have, and I think this is the big differentiator, and I had it in multiple ways, was exposure. And so I had exposure to these hustlers that a lot of them came with nothing and built things. A lot of them came with something and built them into bigger things. But I also grew up in Newport Beach, and at that time, opulence was a very big fad. I graduated high school in 2006, and so I think that was, well, pretty much peak where money was crazy. And so
Mm.
kids were getting Lamborghinis in our high school. And
Jeez.
so
Wow.
I saw that, and so to me, and I remember this so distinctively. Our first job, it was a sales job, and everyone put on their board what they wanted when they made money. It was like a dream board, early exercise. And I looked over at my neighbor, and my neighbor had an Infinity. Infinity is a great car. Do I sit there and think that that's the dream car I'm going to do when I get all my money? And it's just not, because, and for him, where he grew up and what his mindset was, and he was like me at the time, he just saw an Infinity as kind of peak opulence. And for me, because I saw kids getting these ridiculous sports cars that they really shouldn't have, I just saw a different level of it. And I remember the exact moment where I started to recalibrate all value. And it was, so when I was 16, or like right when I turned 16, I asked this guy to mentor me who was 25, and he was already a self-made millionaire in the mortgage business. And he said, I'm not going to mentor you, but why don't you come play basketball with us at 6 in the morning? And so I played in a league, and all those guys were young millionaires. Everyone was under 30 and driving crazy cars, and they were making $1 million transactions in the locker room. And so I saw that that was just common practice. And again, so it just kind of leveled up that opportunity. And so I think I had a lot of influence by the community around me, both Persian Jewish and just being in Orange County, and just kind of seeing that, as far out as it is for a kid to see $1 million, it was being transacted in front of me in a casual setting.
And so, did that teach you that it was possible for you? Did it teach you that this wasn't a crazy idea, that that kind of thing could happen and that you could be involved in it? Like, what was your takeaway from seeing it up close?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you called it. Yeah, my takeaway was, if these guys can do it, why can't I?
Yeah,
And I think secondly, it's also a 5 minute mile was never ran, and then it was ran by a bunch of people, right? And so it's
right.
like you really, we limit ourselves in our belief set, and so that was really eye opening for me that it was just possible. And then
Right.
these guys are also, I think the second part of it, which was really nice, was they allowed me in. So I think, it's one thing to kind of see it from far away and be like, oh, I wonder how they got there and stuff. But to allow me in and see them transact and just spend a little bit of time with me, it really impacted me
Yeah.
as a growing person.
And a lot of people self disqualify before they even grab for that brass ring. Like they might say, "Well, I'm just some guy running a food truck. I shouldn't even apply for that, Food Network show. Like I won't even throw my name in the hat." But perhaps you put yourself out there because of that exposure.
Yeah. And also, I mean, what are you satisfied with? I mean, for me, the number is big, as far as revenue, and how big I want to grow a company. And, most people would be happy getting a company to 8 figures, but for me, that's just a stepping stone in where I want to go.
So talk about the first setback. So you graduate, I think you said 2006 from high school. So 2006, 2007, 2008, for those that don't know, well, we have the global economic meltdown that happened in 08, 09 time period. But real estate in particular was on fire in Los Angeles, all over the country, but especially in LA. And you went into real estate and you end up having to file a personal bankruptcy after this. So this is setback number one. There'll be others later. Don't worry, we'll get to them. But what happened there? How'd you get overextended?
Yeah, it was actually, I think it was less market related and more personal, which was that I had no passion in what I was doing. So I think what happens too is when you drink from the fire hose, where I saw all these guys making crazy amounts of money in real estate at a young age, I went into it thinking that that's what it is. And I remember having a talk with a mentor at the time, and I had always been in love with fashion. That's what I wanted to do since I was a little kid. And I was working in the coolest fashion store in Orange County, and I was making nothing, and I was having a great time. And I talked to him and I said, "Hey, this guy offered me a job in real estate, and I really think that I have a future in fashion." And he was like, "You can always buy clothes. Go work in real estate." And I think it was good advice in the sense that it was bad advice, and I was so young that I needed to learn it. But I remember at 20 years old, I didn't want to go into the office. I was phoning it in, and if you're phoning it in,
Because you didn't like it, because you didn't like the life you were living at that time.
I didn't care about the work I was doing.
Yeah.
I didn't like the life that I was living. I didn't
Yeah.
feel passionate. I think I like growing things. That's a kind of a core value in a lot of ways. So that part felt really good, but there's no such thing as linear growth in a business. And so you have to be passionate to get through the downs. And so that was really clear. And when I hit my first down, I was over it right away. And that's kind of how we got here. And so
Yeah.
it was an early lesson to seeing that exposure made me want to go after it. But then calibrating and realizing that, hey, it's not all about the money. You got to be passionate and love what you do. And so I think the real estate market, the time of the real estate market wasn't great. I did go into the wrong industry at the wrong time. But I actually think that if I had stuck with it, I would have been fine. It was more so I just didn't like what I was doing.
Yeah.
And that was like the first lesson I learned in life, in my business life.
So you like fashion. You end up in real estate chasing the money. That doesn't work out. You eventually come back to fashion, which is where you are today. But in the meantime, you get the food trucks. So how'd you get the food trucks from real estate?
Yeah. So my other passion is food. So food and hospitality, and I think hospitality is a common thread even in my footwear business. But yeah, I always love food. I remember my last job. So I worked in sales for a tax relief company, and the guy who founded this company built a huge business, and it was a very aggressive human, not very nice. And I remember as the new Jack, there's like a sales floor of 8 people. You have to order the boss lunch every day. And I did such a good job in my 3 months until the next guy was hired that he said he's never eaten that well in the 15 years that he's operated that business. And so when he fired me, he said, the only thing you seem to love here was ordering me lunch. And so
Why was ordering lunch so complicated? I mean, I guess these days it's like Grubhub or whatever. Like, were you like creating something boutique or bespoke for
Yeah,
him?
I mean, I was looking up the best places. First off, he paid for your lunch if he was buying, so
Okay.
it was free lunch. But then the
Okay.
other part was I'm so passionate about food, and he loved that, and he loves food too. And so I would research different places, and then I would go get us like really great food or whatever
Okay.
it was. And like I
Okay.
took a lot. I mean, every day was like it was thoughtful. It was
Special. So
intentional, and
you put thought into it.
I did,
Yeah.
and I mean, I was eating it too. I'm not going to eat junk, And so,
Yeah.
and so that was it. And I remember when he fired me for leaving to visit my mom in the hospital. This guy was nuts.
Wow.
He was like, "You should go into food because that's the only time I ever saw you happy here." And I was like, "Oh, interesting." And then I remembered like I've always cooked stuff for family. I've always loved hospitality, and so that planted the seed. And then I thought about restaurants, and I had no idea what a restaurant, how to operate a restaurant, how to get that kind of money. And food trucks were just getting popular. And so I said, you know what? It's a small investment. If I move home, I could reduce down my overhead. And so I moved back from LA to Orange County, back to my twin bed with the bankruptcy and a Range Rover, mind you, because I was making good money and I thought I should buy a Range Rover. So not being the smartest.
Around this time period, I was an attorney practicing law. And I remember going to a bankruptcy hearing where I did both representing debtors and creditors, but this time I was representing a creditor, and the debtor pulled up in an old Hummer. bright yellow Hummer. I was in the parking lot taking a picture of this. I was like, this is messed up, man. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that was a version of me at the time. Except it
Yeah.
was a lease and it was a low lease payment, but it was still
Low
something.
lease, a great way of justifying it. Tell that to the bankruptcy judge, right? Uh, okay, so you go into this, and what were the early days like of doing this? Was it just you? Did you hire anyone early on? So you get a deal on a truck, and I have so many questions. We'll start with that, and then we'll get to others.
Yeah. So when I came up with the idea, I reached out to a high school friend who was beyond passionate about food and who's just started his culinary career. And I asked him, I said, "Hey, I'd really like for you to write a menu." And he is also very entrepreneurial. And he was like, "Write a menu. I'm going to be your business partner."
Okay.
And so we never saw eye to eye on anything. He's a great human. We're just both very strong and opinionated, and he's more opinionated than I am. And we had a very different vision for the brand, but we had a great partnership to kick us off. And so that was that. And we had no employees. We had one intern. He was a bad kid in high school, so he went to a Jewish private school in Irvine, and so they gave him the version of him when he was in high school, who was like this troubled kid, who was awesome. And so we had a free employee, and that was basically the two of us and this kid. And we
And
would
a
go around cooking
and a bad
everywhere.
kid.
And
And
a
a
bad kid, Seth. And Seth was awesome.
okay.
And together we just did every event. And when we were done cooking on the truck, we would prep. I would go do payroll, bookkeeping, whatever it was
Mhm.
needed on the back end. And we were working like, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we were working less than 16 hours a day. We leased a truck. It was a POS truck. Honestly, it was one of the worst trucks I've ever seen in my whole entire life, now knowing the truck industry for so long. But we loved it. Like, and it was every day was a joy, and we were passionate about it, and you could feel it. And I think within a month, we got named the best new restaurant in Orange County, and there's never been a food truck to have ever won that. I think
Wow.
before and after. Maybe now there's one other food truck that did really well in Orange County, but we
So let's stop on that. So how did you decide on the focus? Was it the lime truck from the beginning? And explain what the concept is also.
so year one was a very different concept than year two.
Okay.
We started the idea with healthy, quick grab and go items during the day and decadent scratch made food at night.
Well,
So we
sounds like
said,
a
hey,
great idea for a food truck.
I mean, it
Different
works,
con-
right? You would think like, okay, we hit the office crowd, we give them good, healthy food, and
Yeah.
then hit the late night crowd and we give them decadent, scratch made, high quality, but like, more cheese pulls and things like that. Um, I think that menu lasted for 2.5 weeks. And it
Because it
wrote
was
about the
too
truck.
complicated, too difficult to
No,
execute, too many
actually,
ingredients. What?
yeah, it was. So I think like a week and a half into the menu, Jason comes to me and he's like, "Hey, I don't like the taste of this dish." And I was tasting it. I was like, "It tastes like shit. What's that? What happened?" And he's like, "I don't know. I'm really having trouble making the food consistently." Which, by the way, that's like Chef 101. But
Yeah,
when you're
right.
new to it, it's
Right.
not Chef 101. So that was the first red flag. And then the second red flag, which I'm actually really grateful that he brought this to our attention because this is a lesson. He goes, "Honestly, I just don't like making the same food over and over again. It really bores me." And to Jason's credit, he is now in the culinary industry for 15 years, and he still, to this day, has a successful restaurant where he makes a brand new menu every week.
Wow.
So since the beginning of time, he's kind of had that as one of his core values, and it makes eating at his restaurant really unique and fun because he's
Yeah.
sourcing new things all the time, and they're very
Yeah.
interesting. And so our concept changed a little bit, and then we had a shift that was from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. And we looked at each other and we're like, well, is it late night or is it daytime? Because, we're kind of crossing over both.
Yeah.
And so we put both items on the menu, and the late night items did way better than the daytime items. And so that was where we kind of shifted and focused more on, like I would say quality decadence. That became kind of the cornerstone. And then we did a brand new menu almost every day. We had some consistent items that would come back here and there, and that was what the brand started as, and then eventually ended up being California Mexican.
California, Mexico. Okay. All right. So it kind of evolved into that. And it's a bright green lime colored truck that
Correct.
grabs your attention. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how would you say the food truck scene has changed now? Like is it a lot harder to get started now than it was 15 years ago? Almost 20 years ago now?
Yeah. So the food truck industry had a really organic pop culture moment in 2011, 2012, even 2013, I would say. So if you were a food truck, as long as you can get into the parking lots that have these big crowds, you would do okay. But you really had to figure out your business model. And just because you had those kind of easier layups, like doesn't mean that you were going to be successful because a lot of food trucks went out of business then. So I would say that there's less of an organic awareness around food trucks than there was. But a food truck is a mobile catering business. It's a pop-up, location. It's a accompaniment to different events that don't have food. And so it's one of those things that if you're able to utilize the food truck for what it does well, the industry is still just as good as it was. In fact, my business is doing way better than it was back then, and has grown significantly since back then. But you have to really identify your market and start to understand what makes a food truck special in your community and what community you have to back it up.
Yeah. What point did you, so you mentioned the business part it didn't work out that well. When did you start to wrap that up?
Damn. I think it was 6 months in. He came to me and he said, I don't want to be your partner anymore. It's not that he didn't want to be my partner anymore. He didn't want to cook on a food truck anymore. He said it's too hard to make excellent food every day on a food truck. And then he said, I really want to open a restaurant. If you're okay with it, I would like to be your employee until I do that.
Hmm.
So he gave me the nicest buyout. I mean, there was no money to be paying him.
Yeah.
But he said, hey, just pay my rent for a year. And because we were living together too. He said, pay my rent for a year, give me a little bit of cash, which was like nothing. And I'll work with you for the next like year and a half until my restaurant opens. And that's what we did.
Yeah. What point did you now? Let's talk about the Food Network and reality TV and stuff like that. My brother Andrew Corcoran has been in reality TV for 15 plus years now with Center Drive Media and Lando Entertainment. So I know he's worked on Guys Grocery Games and like all these different shows. So I know a bit of it, a bit of the inside of it. But what gave you the idea of pursuing that? So you apply? Did you apply for different ones before you got into one? No. Okay. So the food truck one. Okay. Yeah.
So they reached out to us.
Okay.
Yeah. So we had built a really crazy cult following in a very short period of time. We had people eat at the truck every day for a year, multiple people. And with a food truck, one day we're in San Clemente, the next day we're in LA. So
they're traveling around, following where you were. Wow.
Yeah, we called them limeades, and they were badass, and I love them.
Wow.
So we had this cult following. This guy Jason Eel, who was this amazing photographer slash like early food blogger, wrote about us a bunch, and he was kind of one of the first people to give us a spotlight. And he was talking to one of the producers of Great Food Truck Race in season one. When we launched, season one came out like a month later, and we saw it and we said, hey, if they do season two, pack our bags, like we're going. And so we had in our mind that it was like going to happen. But sure enough, like when they started casting the second season, they heard about us. We got on a call. Emily Sweet, who's incredible, and I'm still friends with her today, was the casting director. And she's like, these guys are total like animals. We have to put them on the show. And that's how we got here.
Yeah. And I also personally, when I was in college, worked on a kind of a game show. So I was involved in kind of the casting process, and talk a little bit about that because, casting is an interesting art form. You want people that are characters, but they're not too much of a character, like not gonna be too off there. So did you consciously try and play up your personality, or did you just figure I'll be myself and either it'll work or it won't work? Like, how did you go into that?
Oof. Okay, so watching season two, I'm a different human in season two. We were born for it. It was not only that, me and my ex-business partner, Jason, have so much rapport, and we're so argumentative, but it's not in a way that's like, makes you feel like, oh, it's like
Cringe,
it's like
uncomfortable.
It's like funny and annoying and kind of, we both make fun of each other, but in a way that like you'll also laugh and we'll laugh in the process,
Well, that's like perfect for TV then.
Yeah, it was like lighthearted, controversial, like fun. And so it was good for Food Network. We were young and I was so cocky. I mean, in like every episode I watch, I'm just like talking so much shit, and it's like night and day from who I am like now. And also I never understand, once you've been through a season of reality, you kind of understand, oh, what do they need for the storyline? Like, what am I going to say that they're going to cut up and make me look like an asshole? Like,
right. Right.
So, you kind of learn too, like what the concept is. But yeah, I think we played off of each other really well. We had a good time. We were doing really interesting things. We were a really strong culinary team, which I think they really wanted. And so I think we just had a good recipe for that.
Have you had any negative backlash after the fact? They're either in, I don't know, the dating world or friendship world, or where someone saw, the shows and had a preconceived notion about who you are, or anything like that?
So I had Ruby Tuesdays come after me for intellectual property. That was fun.
Oh,
Uh,
because of what?
They own the word lime in a part of Lime Fresh Mexican Grill, which is like an unheard of trademark that like every attorney knows is complete bullshit, and everyone says is someone bribing someone out in the New York office.
Yeah.
And the guy who sued me was pretty ruthless. John Kunkel, I remember him quite well. And so I think that was something that came negative out of the show. The California Department of Sales Tax was like, oh,
Mhm.
if you're doing $15,000 on one episode, how come you're showing so little on your tax returns on your tax? I go, it's TV. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
There's a camera crew outside of my truck and the Food Network's there. Like, that's not how every day happens on this food
Yeah.
truck.
Yeah.
So there was weird things that came out of it that like were kind of unexpected, from getting
Mm.
all that exposure. But I mean, definitely the pros outweigh the cons when it comes to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So let's talk about COVID first, and then we'll get into that. So you ended up acquiring a couple of different catering companies, and at this point, you're doing $15 million a year, and it goes down to about a fifth of that after COVID hits. But take me back to March of 2020, because we're recording this about almost exactly 5 years after that happened. But what's going through your mind as everything starts to unfold?
Oh man, so I was in China getting my footwear. We had it on the final production line when COVID was happening there. And I saw it and they were freaking out about it while we were there. I said, I don't think much of it. I came back. My team at Lime Truck was like, hey, this is our best month we've ever had. Like, this is awesome. Like, everything is going really well. And then in just a short period of time, everybody started canceling. And then it became, are we going to keep the non-refundable deposits? No, we're a legacy brand. We shouldn't be doing that. How are we going to keep the lights on? And I sold all my assets immediately. And it was like basically, I always think of the reference of like, if you're in a casino, like if you have chips, you still have a chance. And so I basically cashed out just to be able to stay in the casino and not cash out of the game. And I had everything go wrong, could have went wrong in that next 9, 10 months when it came to that business. And it was just a lot of every day working 15 hours a day to figure out what the future is going to look like, pivoting and shutting down, unfortunately, a lot of the businesses and some of the things that I bought, prior to COVID.
And at the same time, the footwear business, to explain what the footwear business is. So Snibbs is the name of it.
Yeah, Snibbs. So we make slip-resistant footwear for hospitality, healthcare, for people who work on their feet all day. And it started because I had a slip and fall in the kitchen. It put me into paralyzing pain. I was out cold. I racked up tens of thousands of dollars in medical bills, and I just wanted to create something better for our industry.
And the idea is solid, right? Creating something that's more tactile and that you're less likely to slip. Not something I imagine that hadn't been attempted before. So, I mean, did you get into it with like what materials you're going to use? Like how did you seek to solve this challenge that others have, I'm sure, tried to tackle before?
Yeah, I mean, so there's slip resistant footwear has been around forever, but it looks terrible. It feels terrible. The materials are bad. They're using running shoes, which aren't supposed to be on your feet for more than 1 hour at a time. So they're compressing, hurting your lumbar. So I said, you know what? I'll make it better. I'll bring all of the industry knowledge that I know. I'll test them in the kitchen. I'll partner with one of the top doctors in the world to make them good for you, which I named the company after him because when we took that shoe to a facility to test it, it tested number one of every shoe manufacturer out there's shoes. It tested against them for insole and midsole resilience, which protects your lumbar. And so basically, I just took it one step at a time and I didn't copy anyone in the industry. And it took me 5 years to make, I believe, the best product that our industry's ever seen.
And so that actually took off in March of 2020 as the Lime truck was going down. So talk a little bit about how you managed your time and your focus and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think we launched in March of 2020. I figured we were toast. Like our footwear is for medical professionals. The industry, unless you were in the front line, no one was doing elective surgeries, no one was doing medical, and the frontline workers were overwhelmed. Then you go to hospitality, and there was a forced shutdown. So the idea of selling product to our industry felt to me really like mismatched. It felt like if you care about your industry, my whole company's mission is to elevate the worker. How would I
Yeah.
be asking them to buy a pair of shoes when they're in such trouble? And so what I did was I ended up deciding to go and give away a bunch of pairs to the industry, which gave my guys hours because I took it on my food truck and you get tacos and a free pair of shoes. And it was like this fun thing we did. And I had 7,000 pairs of inventory that I overordered, which is what everyone told me not to do. We gave away about 600, 700 pairs of shoes in that first month. I sold out all 7,000 pairs in the next 60 days.
So just from giving away those, then like it created a buzz or it created an awareness or they told their friends about it.
I believe it was a huge part of it. We had a Kickstarter, we that did really well. We had, a little bit of Facebook marketing that did really well, but it was just a product that was needed by the industry, and we built goodwill and we built something special, and that was our catalyst. And we did a couple $1 million and we sold out of inventory in like a few months. It was pretty crazy.
Wow, wow. And then, of course, there were supply chain issues that came on the heels of COVID. So were you able to, order new batches or new supply?
We're here today. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. It took some
Wow.
time though. We had about a 3 month lull where we had no product.
What have been some of the highs before we get to the fires this year? But what are some of the highs and lows in the last 5 years of building that company? Because that's a very different model, right?
Yeah.
Like rather than like the skills I'm sure that went into like building up the lime truck and food-based businesses and very different from selling shoes, or are they? Or maybe they aren't.
I always say that if you're successful in hospitality, you kind of have the basic building blocks of entrepreneurship down. Because in hospitality, you manage people, which is arguably, and you're managing a more difficult group of people because a lot of them aren't using this as a professional stepping stone or as their future. They're saying like, oh, it's a job. And so you
Yeah.
have to be able to convince and grow people who might not see this as their, lifetime career. And that's really difficult. You have to learn real estate and leases because you have brick and mortar. You have to learn inventory and COGS, but you have to learn it because it's perishable and it's really expensive. And so I feel like you get it's like the ER of business. Like you get a little taste of everything. Like,
Yeah.
sure, I never learned digital marketing as deeply as I learned when I launched the footwear brand. I didn't learn sourcing in China really because that was something we were doing at the time. So I got some new skill sets in the process, but every step of my career, I've been prepping for the next, right? And so that's probably that. I would say highs and lows. I think the most difficult thing for us was we we misinterpreted the landscape of venture. So when we launched was 2020 and VCs and e-commerce businesses were all about lifetime value and growing the business. And if you're not first order profitable, it's okay. And I remember talking to my business coach specifically for footwear. And I said, hey, I'm at a crossroads. I could either be profitable and I'll grow relatively slowly, but I'll grow using cash that I've earned, and contribution margin to grow this business. Or I can go raise a bunch of capital and spend a lot of money to acquire customers and grow really quickly, but it's going to be at a huge negative. And I did it, unfortunately the latter. So I grew the business really quickly and raised a bunch of capital. And then the landscape for ventures switched really, really bad. And then you had Allbirds who went from being this great IPO to being, just tanked. And so that everyone looked at the industry of e-commerce poorly. Everyone looked at D2C poorly. Everyone looked at footwear even worse because the main person that they're comping against is so bad. And so I think that was a big misstep because then fundraising became challenging, closing that round, recalibrating to become a profitable business. That took a little bit of time to kind of unwind and grow. And we're coming out that right now. We've had growth every year, which is amazing. But we're now doing it more consciously so that it's sustainable.
Yeah, and you still have the company, so that's a good thing. There's lots of people, I've heard that story many times before, where people have, the ultimate is that they end up losing control of the company because they gave away too much control or too much equity through the VC process. So that's a positive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was tough. And then on a separate note, I would say in the last 5 years, the thing we haven't talked about, but is actually the thing that threw me off my game the hardest was losing my mom. So in 2020, she passed from breast cancer. And if anyone who knows me well knows me, like my mom is a direct reflection of who I am and was my biggest cheerleader. In a lot of ways, she was really responsible for raising me. And she was the one who gave me my seed money for my food truck and all
Mm.
the support to be an entrepreneur. So I think that happened in the middle of all of this. And so it was both a financial challenge and loss and a business loss, but then it was the personal. And so it was like it was a very difficult time. It was probably the hardest time and hopefully the hardest time in my life.
And I don't know if this is opening up a really long story, but I remember you telling a story where you and I first connected was at a conference in Denver through Entrepreneurs Organization, and you told a story about her. Do you want to mention that
It,
one?
it's a little long, but I would say the thing that makes my mom such a defining character for me is she has been resilient herself. She went from having two really difficult marriages to becoming a homeopathic doctor because when I was little, I had epilepsy and no one could cure me. And she took me to all these naturopaths, and one of them was a homeopath, and the homeopath cured me. And she was so inspired. She became one of the top homeopaths in
Wow.
the world. She wrote a book, everything. So it's she was always redefining herself. She learned how to speak French in her 50s. She learned how to
Mm,
play piano. She would travel by herself because unfortunately I was really busy working and I didn't travel with her. And so she was just a Renaissance woman and always had a growth mindset and always believed in herself. And I remember when I was cleaning out her house, I saw her journals and I loved reading them because they were manifestation logs and they were like,
mm,
they were so inspiring. And this woman, had to immigrate, came here, had a really bad marriage, had a really tough life, and she still stayed positive through all of it. And
mm,
I remember I hadn't gone to her new office. She moved offices about a year before she passed, and I got to her new office, and she had a view of the ocean, and I know that was
mm,
important for her. And it was a little
mm,
slice, and it's all she needed. And it was like,
mhm,
and I was like, this woman did what she wanted, how she wanted, and she kind of she played chess in a weird way with what things were, and I think she
mm.
had some challenges to overcome that maybe she didn't let go of by the time she passed. But if I could end up being just like her in a lot of ways, I would be just totally fine with that.
Well, I think you are because you remain positive in spite of all these setbacks that you've been through from COVID to personal bankruptcy to losing your mom. And we haven't even gotten to the most recent one, which is the LA fire. So
We're gonna run
January.
out of time, John.
I
Yeah.
know, jeez. So you are destined for an amazing 2025 and 2026, given everything you've been through
Let's
in the
hope
past.
so.
So you put in your chit. So yeah, January 2025. I'm from LA. I turn on the news, and it's just this story that we've seen many times before, except this time it was 10 times worse. So take me back to that moment of what was unfolding for you.
Yeah, so I remember every year we go to Hawaii, my wife and I, to unwind for the new year. It's like our thing. And so every time I'm there, I spend, I don't know, like 15, 20 hours on maybe more on goal setting and what I want the next year to be like and things like that. Really, really thoughtful and intentional. And I got back and I had this amazing investor dinner set up and I had all these things that I wanted. And it was Tuesday. We got home on Sunday. So 2 days after we got home. And I'm living my plan. Like everything is going well, blah, blah, blah. And I go outside, I see our hill on fire. It's about a mile and a half from my house. Zero chance I think it's coming down the hill to where I live in the Huntington is really far from any nature. We're in the downtown Palisades, as they call it.
Mm,
And so I get in my car, assuming that I was going to beat traffic for the evacuation. Don't bring anything with me. Same with my wife. Our in-laws were with us. Same with them. That night we lost our house and everything in it, and it
mm,
was a big bummer. My wife was at the time 5 months pregnant, I think.
mm,
It's welcoming our first child. She's now 8.5 months pregnant,
mm,
and so we moved there to build our family. The in-laws were building a home on the street. My
Mm.
brother moved to that neighborhood. Her brother lives in that neighborhood. So we kind of had what I would call the American dream in LA. The Palisades is like a neighborhood. Kids are out on their bikes. Like it's really cool and beautiful.
It is, yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I lost my house in that, and
And your brother lost his house also?
brother lost his house
No.
also. All my mom's stuff was split between our two homes. That was fun.
Oh,
Yeah.
mm.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was one of those things where it was just really instant and um, difficult.
I know that you threw yourself into your work and you got involved with World Central Kitchen, and you've given away thousands of meals after the fire. And we're only 2 months into this right now. Tell me a little bit about what that experience has been like for you.
Yeah. So I feel like everything in my life, it's like this, kind of a training for the next stage of my life. Hopefully it'll get easier, but that's just been the reality of it. And so right after the fire, it was Tuesday. Wednesday, we're living in my wife's aunt's house. There's like three displaced families living in there, kind of in a way. And it's depression. I'm taking baths every 15 minutes. That for me is what I do when I'm not feeling well. And I can't be alone. I can't think about anything. I'm just having a hard time kind of processing. And I felt all of the same feelings I felt deep COVID right after my mom passed. And so instead of this time, that time it took me months to snap out of. And this time it took me just a little bit of time because, one, it's only stuff, which stuff is important. I love stuff like, and the vision and everything like, and money. It was a lot of money that we lost in the process, but it was still just monetary things. And having lost my mom, that was, not monetary. And so I remember it being like Friday, and I'm like, that's it. I'm gonna get out of this. Like I'm not gonna let this define me. I'm gonna let this be part of my story, but not make this like the end of my story, And
Mm,
so I called World Central Kitchen, and I had been donating to them in collaboration in Snibbs. So we have like a shoe we did in partnership with them. And
mm,
so I'd always been a fan of World Central Kitchen, knowing what they do and how cool they are. And I said, hey, I'm sure you guys are going to start doing some stuff here. If you do, I want to be the first call. Sure enough, they call me back later that afternoon. Get on your truck Saturday. You're working an event.
mm.
And so Saturday, I get on my food truck. Tyler Florence is there, which is pure coincidence, by the way. They didn't realize that Tyler and me have like 5 years of me being on his show for the Great Food Truck Race. And so
Mm,
he's on my food truck. I don't have a knife. He gives me his whole knife roll, which is a very personal thing, not a normal thing to give to somebody.
mm.
Uh, and I serve 500 people with him, literally hustling by my side. And we're seeing people that have lost their homes smile. And like one of the guys came up to me and had his whole talk about this is the first moment he had joy since he lost his
Mm,
home.
mm.
And it was just one of those things where, you start to feel so grateful for what you have when you help others, and you realize that I still have so much. Even though I don't have all the stuff I had just a week ago, I still have my health, I still have my dog, I still have my baby on the way, I still have my wife, and granted, we landed on our feet, like it's not like I'm still living in a nice part of LA, like everything's fine, and so
Yeah.
I think it shifted my perspective, and it being called to service is just awesome.
Yeah. Daniel, looking back on your life, and you've mentioned a bunch of individuals of people who've helped you in the journey along the way. I'd love to take a break at the end here and just as my last question, ask about gratitude. And in particular, it's fair enough to mention family and things like that or team, but I love to hear stories of peers, contemporaries, maybe mentors. You mentioned that guy who invited you to the basketball game when you were 16 years old. Um, who in particular would you want to thank for helping you in your journey so far?
Oh my God, it would be almost impossible. But I would, it's my brother gave me Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was 13. Like what? What you know what I mean? Like what an advantage of the world when your dad and your older brother is telling you it's a kind of a rat race, like you got to get out of it. I think one specific person, so in EO, which we're in, they do a mentorship program. My first mentor, Emilio Diaz Barroso. I love Emilio. They're like, hey, we think you're kind of weird in EO, and he's the weird YPOer. So we're putting you together. This guy, he wrote a book, by the way. You can look him up. He is absolutely there was a moment that everything changed for me, and that was him. And it was like he taught me how to build confidence. He taught me that I'm worthy, that like, that I'm going to do great things and that I need to learn how to be comfortable with where I'm at in the moment versus like looking forward and looking behind me. And, that practice brought me to presence, and presence brought everything after that. And so I feel like I've had a lot of great mentors and a lot of great people in my world. My mom, my brother, obviously family we talked about, Emilio, my coaches, Matt. I mean, I just got introduced to someone 3 months ago, Don Weiss. And I don't know how I got so lucky. This guy has helped me with so much. And he started 4 footwear startups from 0 to 100 million. And this guy's taking me under his wing. And it's like, for what? He's not getting anything out of it. He just decided that he retired a year ago, sold his company for a bunch of money, and he's bored, a little bit bored, and wants to help somebody. And he liked me, and that was it. And it's like, I don't know, the world just brings you these amazing people, but like, you have to be ready, you have to be present, and you have to be grateful. And I think, on my to-do list, John, every day, it's kind of a lot, but my morning routine, I don't know if you can see it up there because I don't have a picture of myself on Zoom, but the 10th one down is gratitude. The second one down is meditate. The third one down is journal. So it's like I have to bring myself to presence, and I have to be grateful and open, and amazing people show up out of nowhere just to help you get where you want to go.
Those are great stories, Daniel. I appreciate you sharing that. And I have a few names of people, as you mentioned, that I want to introduce you to afterwards based on what you just said. So hopefully those will be names that, as you said, come out of nowhere and will do good things for you. Daniel, where can people go to learn more about you and connect with you and learn more about Snibbs and Lime Truck and all that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the place where I spend a little bit more time than others is either on LinkedIn or Instagram, and it's just my name, Daniel Shemtob. But yeah, those would be the easiest ways. I have a masterclass on food trucks, and I have a book on food trucks in case that's something you want. I feel like I've really mastered that world, and I love giving back to that community because I think they're awesome. But yeah, those would be
great.
The places.
Daniel, thanks so much.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.